Hello, my fellow readers. I Dark Symphony 777, and I'm back. It's been a very, very, very long while. Uh, to be honest, what happened before I get into this video is one, my mic and camera face cam broke at the same time. It was very, very awkward. So I had to get a new face cam. I got a Logitech, and for a new microphone, I got this really good Amazon brand microphone that I got for $30. It was originally supposed to be like $100, but I got a good deal on it. Hey. And I'm going to be getting it some headphones in so I can better handle with that. But to test the waters of these new doohickeys, I gotta say, shows what I know about technological equipment and stuff like that. I am going to be doing a small tier list of a couple stories. So we're going to go down here. This is where I have all of my fan fictions where I rate them. I got to go all the way down here. All the way down here. So I'm only going to do the ones that are either better off alone tier or the ones that are not. But yeah, the ones that are not, I'm going to be the ones rating. So these ones right here, not that one. These 16 are the ones that I'm going to be rating on a scale of D to A. Why these specific stories? These stories right here actually are the stories that have come closest to being a Better Off Alone tier story, in my opinion. And so I thought I would talk about them in some way to show you my thought process on where I would place these, stuff like that. These are all of the actual Better Off Alone tiers. It's only like 12 stories. Shows how explosive a club this is when these 16 have only gotten close. So let's start with the big one of this year. Stranger in Me. Okay. This is the big one. Why is that? Because this story was actually, I reviewed the story this year. It is a really good story. And the overall plot of Connie getting like a jade, a crystal gem inside of her, and them kind of having to live sort of like Venom from the comics with the symbiote and stuff like that, and then having to live together, and then having to decide whether or not which one has to go, is a really, really good tale. I am the believer of there are no really new ideas anymore. It's just everyone takes inspiration from everyone, so it's up to whether or not you execute it right. And I do like the execution of everything in the story, with the exception of the broken crystal gems that show up periodically. I think they could have been done better. That's just me. I have read the sequel to the story. I was told by the person who suggested Stranger in Me to read the sequel. I read a couple chapters of the sequel. Honestly, at that point, based on what I read, I only read like the first 5 or 6 chapters of that sequel, and if it kept the trajectory of how good it was going to be, then the sequel would have been in Better Off Alone. That's how good the sequel was from the small amount I read of it, that it would have fixed the main issue I had with the original story, where basically just because the corrupt crystal gems weren't really that threatening and they seemed more of a sequel hook. This was the sequel, so there's that. So the main overarching plot of Stranger in Me is Connie and Steven. They fight a big corrupted gem, and Connie gets hurt, and so in his haste, Steven accidentally heals the gem onto Connie's collarbone. and that causes the gem, a Jade, to kind of start living in her mind and be able to talk to her, and it's just them basically living together, trying to figure out how everything works, while also kind of figure out if how they can save Jade and find out about Jade. It's a really touching tale. The reason I have it at 9 is not because it's not so much that it doesn't deserve the 10. It's more, I've been thinking ever since I reviewed that story whether or not to actually put it in the Better Off Alone tier, because as it stands right now, 1 second, I do apologize. I was actually getting a call from a friend. Yeah. So where was I? Where was my thought process? Yeah. Now I remember. The reason why it's a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 is because I'm not 100% sure whether or not to actually put it in the Better Off Alone tier, because this story, spoiler, when I go to the top 10 that I do at the end of the year for the best stories I reviewed, this is far and away the best story. So, depending on if I stay the course and keep it just under Better Off Alone tier, or I do think it, like, the characters of Connie and Jade are enough to push it barely into Better Off Alone tier, whether or not it appears as number 1 or doesn't appear at all, because I now have the Better Off Alone tier stories technically disqualified, because that'd just be too obvious a choice. So I'm still trying to figure out where to put it. So, the 9 and the 10, it'd be 9 out of 10 is not indicative of where it is. So I'm going to put that in the S tier. Right there. Okay. Next one. Let me just... Yeah. That's A Stranger in Me. Next one. Let's do the few Yu-Gi-Oh one. Let's do this one. Journey Through Light and Darkness. This was the kind of legend, not legend, Lord of the Rings-esque story involving Dark Magician Girl and the Dark Magician and a bunch of other dual monsters. This is a story that you have to be knowledgeable in the card game, specifically the card game and certain monsters to even know. The plot is a very, very elaborate plot. It stretches along 4 stories that get longer with each story. Actually, let me actually pull this. Let me actually pull one of them up. Let me see, where is it? Where is it? Excuse me. There it is. Here's volume 1. Okay. You have the first one, which is like 77,000, and then it bumps up each volume, and I think like volume 4 is like 250 something thousand words. Yes, 250,000 words. So total, all 4 stories, I think, make about 500, probably somewhere between 400 and 500,000 words. And it's a really, really good 4-part story. The only condition is this story is not on fanfiction.net anymore. The only reason I have this story is because I literally asked the author, because when I first read it, I wasn't able to finish it, and I asked the author, it's like, hey, can I review this story for my channel? Can I have, like, it's like, okay, you can have it, but under the condition, you can't give it to anyone. It's like, that's fine. But as a story by itself, it not being able to be accessed by anyone is kind of a weird situation, because it's not really, the story itself is okay. It's just in the simplest terms, a sort of like coming of life story. Like, Mana, the Dark Magician Girl, is lazy, but then over the course of the entire story, she grows, she learns to be a leader, she learns to be a hero, and she saves the world, and she gets like more mature. So it's like, it's okay. I'm gonna put it in the B tier. So next one, let's do another. Now let's finish the Yu-Gi-Oh stories. Duel Twilight vs. Twilight. This is a My Little Pony Yu-Gi-Oh crossover. One of the two. Because I like this one, and then there's also the Dueling for a Chance one. I like that one a little bit better, but I think this one tells about a story. The story behind this is the My Little Pony characters, they play Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's in Equestria Girls, and all the humane sex, they kind of wonder who is the better duelist, Pony Twilight or Human Twilight, and Human Twilight's like very embarrassed, like I don't really duel and stuff like that, and the Humane Sex, mainly Rainbow Dash, kind of trick the Pony Twilight into dueling the Human Twilight, and it does have a meta context for those who specifically play the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, that everyone has a favorite deck, and it turns out Human Twilight's deck is notoriously a very bad archetype or very bad group of cards, and everyone kind of makes fun of her. And then the cards reveal to be dual spirits, and they actually kind of help her. And then we got like the very touching moment where her big boss monster actually blocks her from seeing her cards be destroyed, and she breaks down. It's actually a really touching moment. And then they blame Rainbow Dash, like, really do that? It's like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. In terms of plot, it's definitely probably the weakest of these, because we're literally just rating them in a bubble. Like, how likely they would be to be put in the better off tier. So that's basically the qualifications. I know I didn't say that until now. Also, I didn't say subscribe and like the video, but there we go. Where's the other one? Dueling for a Chance. This one is between Rarity and Suri Polymer, and this one doesn't really have as much of a plot. This one's just basically Suri kidnaps Sweetie Belle, beats her up with like duel monsters by terrifying her with the let me just put that there. With let me just Fright for Leo. Yeah. Yeah, she terrifies her with this guy. You afraid? But yeah, there's not much of a plot with just Rarity just wanting revenge for scaring Sweetie Belle. And then we got like the epic moment near the end where she summons Vylon Omega. Let me type in Vylon Omega. Vylon Omega. Yes. This absolute Chad. And he descends from the heavens as big as a skyscraper. And Suri's like looking up, it's like, I'm dead, aren't I? You right are, darling. and then Omega just winds up, just punches the building. He's like, "You done goofed," and basically just no. And yeah, that's a simple enough story. It's just I want payback, darling. But yeah, that's it. But those two I think are going to be the only D tier stories, because they don't have much of an overarching plot. They're just very entertaining stories. Let's finish the My Little Pony one. Mother of Invention. Oh boy, I love this story. This story is centered around Applejack, where she gets stuck on this random island. It's just a big old story of her just trying to survive and try and get off the island, and her finding the truth behind them being like the Daedalus Corporation, which is like this sort of umbrella / SCP amalgamation, and the only thing living on the island besides her is this like demon that they created that killed everyone, and that caused the island to board up and with a dome, so that way she can't really communicate with Twilight and Celestia. And it's a very harrowing story. It's mostly classical horror, where the suspense is where you don't know what happened. You don't know a lot of the stuff, especially regarding the Daedalus Corporation, is deliberately left vague for that sense of horror. So you don't know what happened. You don't know. You have that sense of what happened, what truly caused everything to happen. Because as the story goes on, Applejack finds these dilapidated buildings. They are covered in dust, grime. There's no skeletons. There's no bodies. It's just nothing. It's like something from Roanoke, Virginia, where like just the bodies disappeared. And it's that sense that really pushes the story to be such a good overall experience. It is let down by the fact that there was a part where she reads a journal that kind of answers some questions. I think I honestly I get there was a narrative reason why, because she needed to find that journal to be able to access the controls to be able to escape the island. The whole point is her trying to escape the island, because the dome was specifically designed to keep that thing out from escaping, and it can't. But that doesn't really impact the story that much. Hey. Yeah, S is literally reserved only for Stranger to Me, because I'm still unsure whether or not it actually deserves to be in the Better Off Alone tier. So, next one. Let's go. Dynamic Equilibrium. Let's put this one in. This one is the Bones Falaria crossover. And oh boy, why did I not put this in Better Off Alone? Simple. One, the villain, Exona. Pretty underwhelming as a villain. Like, I get her whole thing. She wanted to invert the social structure of Falaria, because Falaria is this big island where like these gigantic 60, 70 foot tall people eat smaller people, like whole. And we have all of that. And I get that with her wanting to upend the social structure that the big gigantic Nagas and Dryaders and Giants and ogres or something like that. They're the ones being hunted. They're the ones being tamed. They're the ones being controlled. But her whole plan was kind of flawed, because the author kept playing like this very teasing game where it kept teasing that she's gonna kill someone, only to not have her kill someone. And then they keep doing that over and over again over the cost of like a 400,000 plus words story. And it only gets so much until you just completely stop taking the villain seriously. And that's the big flaw. I lost any sort of impact. Like, she lost credibility as a villain, because the author kept tiptoeing around her, trying to not killing someone. Work harder, work smarter, not harder. It's like, just, kill someone. Just kill. That was like my big takeaway with this. Like, yes, it is one specific moment, but it's such a big moment. Sorry about the light. My friend is playing a game. It's such a big moment that actually hinders the story. The fact that the author didn't do this, and there's that. I mean, the plot itself is good. I'm gonna put it B tier. The plot is good. It's a big old mystery of Bones and her crew with Booth and Sweets and all that go into this mystical land where like people are being eaten whole by these gigantic things because they have to do that to survive. It's actually the most nutritious thing for them. And then having to solve this big conspiracy that involves a skeletal remains actually showing up in the forest, where that's physically not possible because of how the society works. And it's just a really overall enjoying adventure with her especially with Bones, Bones is pregnant in the story, because this is before she gave birth in Bones. With her, trying to solve all this and trying to understand the culture and the world of Falaria. It's actually a quite enjoyable story from a scientific standpoint. If you're into that, this is a really great story for that. For those daring do's. There's that. Let's do the other Grey X. The Fusion of Destinies, the first Fusion of Destinies. This is just in the shadow of the second story. Okay, so the story of Fusion of Destinies 1 is Samus comes back in time and ends up at Hogwarts. And so her and Harry have to team up to fight the X-Parasites that are being controlled by Voldemort. Spoiler alert, Voldemort was actually involved in the whole thing. It's actually pretty clever how he did it. Basically, he's like, well, Voldemort is Voldemort. He won't touch Muggle prophecies. That's what makes it so ingenious that he's gonna touch it this time. Ha ha ha! Yeah. I was thirsty. And so the plot is just basically just that. It's just Samus, Harry Potter team up to fight the X-Parasites. They go on the copy of the battleship. Not the battleship. The research station that was up like a rebuilt version from Metroid Fusion. So what stopped this story from being a Better Off Alone tier is two reasons. One, it dragged on way too much in the second half. So once they left Earth, it was her, Harry, Hermione, and Ron. No, just her and Harry. Ron and Hermione were on Earth. They got involved in the sequel. And then that part, it kind of starts to drag on a lot. It just weirdly simultaneously speeds up its pacing, but at the same time slows down its pacing. I don't know how it's like you expect it to go fast, or you expect it to be stretched out over the course of a longer story, and it's just weirdly cut and rushed. The only good part about the second half is the fight between Samus. Excuse me. Is between Samus and Voldemort. That was actually a well-written fight. There was also the fact that the Harry Potter X-Parasite, basically, X-Parasites, the whole thing is they take the DNA off anything they eat, and then they take the identity of that creature. HPX is a good idea, basically like an evil X-Parasite version of Harry Potter. However, once we actually got to the fight between Samus, I can't remember if it was Samus versus HPX or Harry versus HPX. No, it was Harry. Where Harry fought him, it was very, very underwhelming. This seems to be like the weird habit with Grey X as an author. The author has this habit of building up these villains really, really well, and then when we finally get to see them in action, they're just so underwhelming. Exona is out of the three, Exona is probably the best one, because the only thing is you couldn't take Exona seriously as a villain, period. But when they actually got to the fight, it was actually really cool with the final battle, with the final blow being with all her plans going on, collapsing around him, and then Booth showing up and just clocking her in the face with with a pair of magical powered brass knucks. It was actually no, that was what he did to Garado. He did that to Garado. Exona basically got pummeled over the course of 7-8 chapters by fire-based giants, and then she got super tired, and then Bode became like a god and just beat the shit out of her. There's that. But yeah, both HPX and Valkyrie, especially Valkyrie, but Valkyrie is just a great villain that I kind of saved that. But HPX was kind of it was there. I'm gonna put it there. That's only 9 left. Which one should I do next? Let's do Saboteur Island. The Mole Saboteur Island. So, fun fact, this video was actually supposed to be the first half of the Saboteur Island introspection because I'm already almost done with Saboteur Island again, and it was going to be cut into 2 halves. And this video was actually supposed to be the first half. However, I forgot my notes at my job, which means I didn't grab it. So, what stopped Saboteur Island from being better off Frontier? 2 reasons. 1, Vivian. Yes, I love Vivian. It's a great character. Not in the story. Vivian is, without that, the weakest version of Vivian in a Mario fanfiction in this story. He doesn't really have much of a character. I'm going to get more into deep detail on this when I talk about it. But Vivian is such an underwhelming character that it almost comes off like an asshole that she won. There is actually explanations inside the story of why she won. Specifically, she won because she had a photographic memory, which is fine. And there's also reasons why, certain other characters didn't win. Again, we'll go with that. So reason number 2. Going back and reading it this 3rd time, some of the challenges seemed oddly muted. Like they're not McBallyhoo's not as a big a presence as he is in the first story, or especially in the 3rd story. In the 3rd story, he's a really, really big presence, like a large portion of the time, because that story is more character oriented. But when looking back, a lot of the characters are kind of meh. This is more of a balance between the character-driven stuff, and even then, this story has like Rosalina and Wendy Koopa, who are not really that well character. They don't have anything. But the main finalists, especially the mole, I'm kind of talking myself out of it. I just realized it because I realized, yeah, there's a point behind all this, and I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. You know what? Ignore the second part. Just focus on the first part. Vivian is a very, very underwhelming character. The only characters worth reading about in Saboteur Island are Lovey and Wario. Those are the only 2. The rest of the characters are just either they're not there, which is Wendy, Rosalina, and McBallyhoo, or they're just kind of and Vivian with that, or they're just kind of they're slightly developed, but they don't go in all the way, which is like pretty much everyone else except for Wario and Lovey. They're the only ones who actually have actual character arcs and deep characters to them. There's that. Oh yeah, Mole gets. We're gonna put it in C. I did think it's a good story. It does strike the perfect balance between the competitive aspect and the character aspect. There's that. Oh, 8. Let's go with Professor Arc. This one's easy. Inconsistent theming. That's the reason why this one's not better off on tier. This story has very, very inconsistent pacing, and the fact it doesn't. At times, the story doesn't know what it's trying to do. I still think this is a very entertaining story. It is mostly a comedy fan fiction about John Arc becoming a teacher at Beacon, and then him just trying to figure out everything as he goes. And then he gets wrapped up with like Roman and Neo. It's like, Neo, teach him. Neo, don't Neo. Neo, what do you do? Why do you have that spoon? It's like, oh, you want me to feed you ice cream? Okay, open up. Do you speak? And this story is much better than Forged Destiny. But yeah, this story is really, really inconsistent when it comes to the main theme of him being a hero in a different way. It again, you can only flex so much because it's unlike most of his other stories. This is mainly a comedy story, so you can cut it some slack. And that's why it's A. And let's go on. Another easy one. Angseth. The third act. Just the entire third act sunk this story. This story is basically a retelling of a fan theory in Metroid Prime 2, where when you play Metroid Prime 2, you come across these dead bodies of various members. And one of them is a character named Angseth, who was a Samus Aran fan. And when people noticed that the screen was blank, people thought of the idea that, Angseth might have survived, is hiding somewhere. And so this story kind of takes that theme and goes on with it, with Angseth manages to help Samus escape Aether, and then she becomes admiral of her own fleet, and this is just basically a story telling her last mission. She gets phazon poisoning. She befriends Weevil. She talks to the Chozo and all this. It's a really, really complicated story with there's even corruption in the organization she's part of in the military. But then the entirety of Act 3 is a complete shambles. It's horribly written. And it completely sinks the story. It completely sinks the story from being in a better epilogue tier. I know it's not the author's fault, because the author didn't inform me when I told her about this that her husband did the editing, and around the time their act was about to start, they kind of broke up, and so she kind of forced herself to finish the story on her own. And hence why, if you actually read Angseth and get to the third act, you'll notice there's a very, very drastic difference in the writing style and the pacing and everything. And you can immediately tell. And so, it goes B. It makes me wonder what could have been if they broke up after the story. So I got 6. Tournament of Shadows. Let's do the last Yu-Gi-Oh story. Tournament of Shadows. This is a really, really good story. Held back by one thing. Too much dueling. Too much dueling. I get it. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh story. It's supposed to replicate the anime. That's the whole point. However, this is something I've always criticized the Shadow Chaser stories on. It has dueling is literally 80% of each chapter. It's what at least mitigates it somewhat by having more character interactions and more one-off characters that are more entertaining. So at least, it's something, but still, it's just overshadowed. It's just overcrowded with dueling. Oops. 5 more. Which one should I do next? Let's do Straw Hats on the Iliad. Let's do this one. Miss Cardboard, your time is up. It's time to stop. No, I'm kidding. There's actually no reason why this story is not in a better off alone tier. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, because there's way too many characters, and it didn't really focus enough. This story was carried by Zoro and Helena. I'm gonna put there. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of a thing. It's it's a Straw Hat story. It focuses on the Straw Hats, but then it doesn't focus on the Straw Hats. It only focuses on Zoro and Luffy, and kind of Robin. Meanwhile, the rest of them are just there. Usopp is there. Sanji is there. Chopper is there. Nami is there. Even at points, Luffy and Robin are there. It's kind of weird. That's kind of the weird thing. It's just, I get why, because this story takes place before the events of Skypiea, so it makes sense why. Excuse me. So, especially since the crew wasn't big enough that you had to separate the focus on each one, like you did in the time skip. But there's still a point where you try and juggle all these characters and you ultimately fail it. That's ultimately the story's one glaring fault. It's just you try to focus on all the Straw Hats and you didn't quite succeed at it. That still doesn't fault this story of being a very good story. I still love Straw Hats in the Iliad. I still hope that someday we'll see the third one. I'm waiting. I know you're gonna watch this. And then there's that. Let's see. Let's do Megami no Hanabira. Let me see what the. All right, Megami no Hanabira. Okay, this is a really weird one because I have no fathomable reason why the story is not better off alone tier. I know this was 2021. Yeah, this was 2021, and this was second place. Yeah, I think this was second place. Let's actually look. Megami. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, this is 2021. I'm trying to remember what was the story that I had her as number one here. I'm trying to remember. No, I know number three was Purgatory. I think. I'm honestly trying to. Straw Hats in the Iliad was number one. Now I remember. Straw Hats in the Iliad was number one, and especially since I read some of the story again, and I'm especially now that I'm more familiar with how Megami Tensei works, it kind of makes me say that I should have went back in time and switched Straw Hats in the Iliad and Megami, because I think I can make the argument that Megami probably would nowadays. Now that I know a lot more about Megami Tensei, I can probably make the argument that I should have switched Megami and Straw Hats for number 2 and number 1 in that top 10. But I do think this kind of suffers the same situation with Straw Hats in the Iliad. There's too many characters. A lot of the there's also the antagonist. That's why I put Straw Hats over Megami. The antagonists outside of Archibald are just really there. Like there's the crazy guy, there's the anger guy, and then there's the deceiving girl, and then there's the socialists. I think, and like social Darwinist sort of thing. None of those antagonists are really any good. Archibald Phillips wasn't really that good an antagonist until the final chapter, where the entire chapter is just one gigantic long fight against him. I think that fight was like 60,000 words. I don't know. I think that's like a long one. That goes A. A as well. Yeah. There's also the fact that the Megami, the good guys, as they get more people, like there's only like 6 people, it kind of gets a little hard to keep track of all of them. But that's more of it's not really a bad thing for this in this case. So let's see. Purgatory. There's one big reason why Purgatory is not a Better Off Volunteer. Sydney. Sydney. I love Jane. I really like Clint. But Sydney is such, compared to Clint and Jane, Sydney is such is kind of a bland character. I get why he's there. He's supposed to represent the more adventurous side. Again, Purgatory was kind of unique in the fact that the story kind of flitted between genres based on which character you were focusing on. But Sydney was just something of an underwhelming character that kind of really took an impact. Plus, there was all the decision to bring the girl from the flashbacks, Hannah. I'm drawing a blank on her character because I could care less what her name was. The flashback girl. She should have. I still stand by my decision. She should have stayed in the flashback. It was such a bad decision to bring her into life and not only to kill her a little later. I just think that was a bad decision. But yeah, it is what it is. She's going to go with A. These two are also going to go in A. Let's start with Melancholia. The Castlevania fanfiction. I'm still waiting for Deluge. It's been so long for Deluge. But yeah, Melancholia. That was, I believe this story was number 1 of 2020. What year was this? I know this was number 1 of Melancholia. Yeah, right here. There it is. Yeah, I think this was. No, wait. No, this was during the time. Yeah, no wonder. Yeah, I think this was around the time where I was still doing the Better Off Alone tier, and most of the top 5 were literally the Better Off Alone stories. But I think this one was number 5, so that kind of speaks for how good this story is. Let me go back down. That this thing, you know what? I'll put Melancholia right. Yeah. Okay. It's a really, really good story. Even like the whole homoerotic aspect of it with Walter doing, the adult thing with Joe Kime, and then Joe Kime having to do that with just some random stranger because he's just he slowly starts to go mad. And then his whole report with Leon Belmont, the whole idea of a noble kind of falling, especially since there was a prequel to it that kind of explored why this happened, why Walter targeted Joe Kime. But that story never completed, and just like Stranger and Me, if that prequel was done, that story would have been in Better Off Alone tier, because that story was way better than Melancholia by a country mile. Probably even would have beaten Better Off Alone for like the best fan fiction of all time. Probably would even beat Not This Time Fate. That's just me. But I just love this story. It is a borderline. It's pretty much a masterpiece. I had nothing bad to say. You know what? I convinced myself. No, it's going right there next to Stranger Me. It got to now getting to the point. I don't even know why I don't have it in Better Off Alone tier. I may actually bump this one up to Better Off Alone tier. Because now that I'm talking about it and remembering it, I don't have anything bad to. I literally had nothing bad to say about this story. I mean, yeah, it does have some religious undertones. Joe Kime is something of a kind of a guy who's falling out with the church because he's sickly and he's like very pale, and he's blaming the church for his father's death, at his mother's death. Well, he's blaming his father for his mother's death. Again, the prequel that would actually explain that. And his gradual descent into like madness as a vampire. It was an immensely captivating story that, you know what, I'm putting it. No, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. You can't stop me. None of you watching can stop me. Where do I put this? 17. You cannot stop me. 17. This should have been fixed so long ago, but now it's fixed. I just gotta go. I gotta go back and fix this. 17. There we go. Yep. There we go. Right. Now that I got that, last story. Thankfully, this one is an explanation. I do like honestly, the story has the best Vivian. It has the best written Vivian. It is a really great story. Sorry, just something on my laptop. The story of the Mario Bros and their friends kind of go into this alternate version of reality where the Shroobs actually won. Granted, they came back, but they won in the end because they killed Mario, they killed Bowser, they killed Luigi, they killed everyone except for Princess Peach and this evil Empress Peach, kind of just wanting to invade this other version of the Mushroom Kingdom to basically take over, and so she can be beautiful again by replacing her body with the regular Peach. The whole subplot between Vivian and Mario falling in love, and even the more comedic side plot with Bow hoping Luigi kind of get over his fear of ghosts, like. That sounded more like Waluigi than Luigi. Bang bang, sort of thing. Like Bow kind of interrupting Luigi in the bathroom, and then just staring at him while he's while he's taking a number one, and just staring at him in the eyes. Not where you expect. It doesn't go that route, but he just stares at him in the eyes. But she does make a comment. It's like, I seem bigger. You dirty ghost. Oh wow, Bow. I really like Bow. This is like the only story that has Bow as a character, which I really appreciate. But the big thing is Vivian was written really well in the story. Mario was written really well. The immense twist of the leader of the Shroobs still being alive and then bursting out of Princess Peach's soul and reviving herself. That was such an amazing twist. So what stopped the story from being in the Better Off Alone tier? I really hated that. I really hated how they beat the Shroom Princess with the sticker. And that just gave me painful flashbacks to Sticker Star and how bad that game was. Oh, no, I really hated it. That was an abomination. Should have been killed with fire. Well, and it's going to go in the A tier. So that is this tier list. I'm going to delete this because this doesn't need to be here anymore. Goodbye. So yeah, I will see you next time with the next fan fiction I'm going to review, because updates are going to be slow because I actually am really, really worried about my family situation. And the fact that now I got to keep my recording equipment at my friend's house, and I can only visit him every 2 weeks, so it's gonna be very slow. But I will see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.